Welcome to the Canadian Food Podcast, where we explore the foods that made us and all the controversies that come with them. My name is Victoria Grondin, and I am a food writer, chef, and someone with a personal vendetta against table syrup.
And I'm Juan Palma. I love to cook, but mainly eat. My love for food is unreal, and I will eat almost anything because to me it is about the experience, not the flavor. I also make food content on TikTok once in a blue moon when I find the energy, time, and willpower to cook and film for 2 to 3 hours. So I'm very lucky that maple syrup does not include any cooking for me today. Today we'll be covering maple syrup, along with a handful of iconic maple products.
Absolutely. So, we'll be looking and testing out three different products: maple butter, maple candy, and maple spirit. We'll let you in on the history of maple syrup, break down the fundamental steps of modern maple syrup production, and we'll also do a very quick dip into one of the biggest heists in Canadian history. Are you ready for this?
I am ready for this.
I'm so excited. This is an episode that feels like it needed to happen, but the second I was done doing the research, I realized this is the first of several episodes that need to be done on maple syrup. So, like, this is the tip of the iceberg, and I'm just ready for everything. So, to start off, where we always need to start off, what's the definition of maple syrup?
According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, maple syrup is a syrup made by concentrating the sap of maple trees and especially the sugar maple.
So there's about 124 species of maple trees in the world that can all be tapped for edible sap. But the sugar maple is widely regarded as the one yielding the highest quality syrup. So maple syrup is a beautiful product. But you cannot just plant a sugar maple just anywhere. So, for example, Thomas Jefferson tried really, really hard to expand maple syrup production across the United States and pretty much failed essentially because of how specific maple syrup conditions for productions are. So the soil has to be rich and moist, and it has to be set in a region with a really long spring so that the sap can come down properly. So in Canada, that would be the reason why the bulk of the maple syrup is produced in Ontario, New Brunswick, and most importantly in Quebec. So the province of Quebec produces a really large percentage of the world's supply of maple syrup. What do you think that percentage is?
I'm gonna go with 92.3%.
I
You gotta throw in
appreciate the confidence and specificity. So it's not that far off. It's 80%. Some
damn.
say like 77%. But we've lost track of a lot of what we made. So it could be more.
Right, yeah.
We just keep losing barrels left and right. So I don't know. So people left love to specify that maple syrup is a Quebec product. I don't know if you've heard this. Like, you've been living in Quebec. Do you have people who are like, no, 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 people say it's Canadian, but this is from Quebec? Have you had those?
Um, yes, but not here, I think, actually. Not actually in Quebec, because I don't really socialize with people here, you know. But people back home, back in Florida or back in the States, a lot of times they did mention this sort of thing. And I think I once also compared maple syrup to regular table syrup, like pancake syrup,
How
like Aunt
dare you?
Jemima's. This was at the very beginning of the relationship with Lisa, and I compared her and I was like, it's just syrup. It's the same thing. And she's like, the same thing? No, it's not.
So
And soon I found out, yeah, it's definitely not the same thing. It's completely different.
it's completely different, but also it was designed to be very similar. So I dove way too deep into the history of maple syrup, as one does. And it was really difficult to market and produce, and especially conserve maple syrup for a long time. So the cost was pretty high, and it kept on competing with cane sugar. And so before in the United States, it was required to say the ingredients in a product. They started mixing, I believe cane syrup with molasses and corn syrup. And then they would add in a bit of fenugreek or hickory in order to give it that,
Hmm.
classic woodsy flavor. So the
Right.
purpose of table syrup was to imitate, maple for a lower cost. But
Hmm.
I will say I'm known for whenever I was bored and broke in Montreal and I wanted to travel, I would go to Vermont because it was an hour away and it sounded bougie. One
Hmm.
time we went for my birthday and I decided I wanted to try IHOP because I did not understand what it was. And there was a little jug of syrup on the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought it was maple syrup. And I was like, ah,
Hmm.
Vermont coming through. And then I put it like the way I would put maple syrup on a pancake, which is an offensive amount.
Yes.
When
Yes.
I took that first bite, I was so offended at America as a whole. Like, I don't understand why you would name something based on the furniture it's on. That's not a
You know,
food. That's most likely not a food.
exactly. And you know what I think is a little bit disgraceful here is the fact that I believe Vermont also sells its own maple syrup because I have
Absolutely.
had Vermont maple syrup before as well, and it just doesn't make sense as to why they would serve table syrup at an IHOP in
Yeah,
Vermont.
it's
Just
incredibly
serve them
disrespectful.
the real
So,
stuff.
yeah, in the United States, I believe New York and Vermont are two places where they make their own maple syrup, and it's a big part. So, in Vermont specifically, they regulated, promoted, and share knowledge surrounding maple syrup production in order to like improve it. So, yeah, this
Hmm.
is a big thing for them. It's a big part of their tourism, and so for America to disrespect Vermont that way. It was
Yeah.
just so big. And then we're supposed to go on a hike that day. And we had planned it pretty thoroughly because we had just traveled to the United States for the day. We did
Hmm.
not go on a hike. We went on a post IHOP Target run, and that was it. I think that felt perhaps more American. But essentially, here, like just the way that we think Vermont when we think U.S. maple syrup. We think Quebec where we think Canadian maple syrup.
Hmm.
I'm not going to back that personally. So we only know about maple syrup because of the extensive agricultural knowledge of indigenous communities who had already mastered the land way before Jacques Cartier came over. It's like our first piece of history that we have from like Jacques Cartier and Europeans who came like here in I want to say 1535. There was a
Hmm.
priest who hung out with Jacques Cartier and he wrote about maple syrup, but he wrote about it through the lens of indigenous communities. We did not know anything, and to this day, the bulk of our knowledge is has been built off of indigenous communities. Now, of course, our recollection and our collection of information surrounding maple syrup and the history of it is kind of clouded. So there's a couple of really nice oral stories which have now been put down to paper. And my personal favorite is the one from Braiding Sweetgrass. But Juan also has his own personal fav, which is picked up from the Crown Maple Guide to Maple Syrup.
Right. And it's one Iroquois legend starts with an unconscious axe swing. Waxus, did I say that right? Waxus, the leader of the tribe, killed a deer for the following day's meal, and then threw his axe into the trunk of a maple tree. Overnight, the sap from the gash in the tree dripped into his wife's cooking, and seeing it full of what she thought was water, she proceeded to simmer the venison in the pot. Soon she saw that the meat had become coated in a thick brown syrup, and she became fearful of her husband's distaste. Upon seeing the meat, he initially scolded her, but once he took a bite of the sweetly barbecued meat, he could not help but smile with delight. Fantastic story.
I
Fantastic
love
story.
that story so much, but also, it's going to sound unbelievably specific. There's something very hot about the hero of the story throwing an axe to the point where it does a gash that's like 1 to 2 inches deep into a tree.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
me,
that's a
that's
lot of
like,
force.
I would like to meet that man and I will make him all the meat he wants. No problem.
That man was like
Swole.
super angry or something. Heck, exactly. To be just thrust
Well,
an axe into a tree to the point where it gushes out maple syrup.
for me, it's like if we think critically about this man's strength and emotions at the moment, it's like post adrenaline from hunting. You're just like it's not. It's more this sort of exhaustive strike. It's just like, oh, I'm over it. I'm done, and you just chuck it. when
Right.
I'm done with something, I do not chuck with that much force. So I really like the story because I'm just imagining the main character and I'm like, yes, absolutely. But yeah, so now maple production is now spread across the country. And both indigenous and non indigenous communities alike have mastered the art of maple syrup production. We did pick two products today from my favorite company in Toronto, which is Forbes Wild Foods.
Now, Forbes Wild Foods specializes in wild edible products handpicked by expert foragers across the country, which I find to be fantastic. I love
It's so
foraging. I think
cool.
it's a great idea. They've been super forthcoming with us about the composition of the company. As of as of February 2022, 3 out of 5 of the directors are indigenous, and the 30 small shareholders in the company are a mix of indigenous and non-indigenous individuals.
And now, just to clarify, we are not sponsored by Forbes Wild Foods, but I will talk about them ad nauseum because I am obsessed with everything they do. So last year, actually for 2 years in a row, I tried from the middle of downtown Toronto with no car to get my hands on just a bucket of Saskatoon berries. So Saskatoon berries are this very specific berry that looks like a small elongated blackberry. They're very nutty and they have an extremely short shelf life. And I believe there's something it would be easier to find, in BC or the prairies. So they
Mhm.
were hard to find. I was myself. I messaged around Saskatoon berry season for Wild Foods like twice on Instagram. And not only did they message me to say like, oh, we don't have it this week, they then messaged me when they had it. And I was able to get the one basket they had for that season because they didn't get that many that year. I
Right.
love them. I have their fresh products. I have their preserves. I have their mushroom powder. I really like them. And when I asked them about the composition of the company, they reply within 10 minutes. And you know how I feel about transparency, and you know how many times I will email a company. So this made me really happy.
Good customer service.
Excellent customer service. They were really nice. So I will back them up forever. They don't need to pay me. I mean, if you want to pay me, you can, but like I'll still keep on
Yeah,
doing
right. We're
this.
not we're not opposed.
Yeah, we're not against it. I saw this morel mushroom powder. I'm just saying. So today we got
You're gonna have to
two
send me this
products.
website.
I got you. So today we've got a few products from them. And the first one is maple butter. So how do you think maple butter is made?
Well, I have tried to make infused butter before, and I want to take a wild guess that maybe it's just a matter of heating up the maple syrup and then, adding a stick of butter in there and then heating it all together and then just kind of letting it cool off. And that's about it. And then you have butter. That's my wildest guess.
That's actually very close, and it's how a lot of maple products are made because nowadays we love to add fat into everything. So whenever there's something sweet, we'll put fat. It's very close in the sense that because it's a sweetener, you can make it like caramel. So to make
Hmm.
maple butter, you take whole maple syrup, usually amber grade, so that's the lightest shade. You will heat it to about 112 degrees Celsius. Then you're going to put it over an ice bath and cool it all the way to 52 degrees Celsius. And then you'll whip it for a couple of minutes until it turns from like dark golden to a light creamy beige.
Hmm.
And that's going to get you a really nice, airy, smooth consistency. And that's what you'll pack in the maple butter jar. So even though the name says butter, there's absolutely no butter in it.
Okay.
Sometimes I've made it myself. You can put, if you're not too confident about making it at home, you can add 1 or 2 like tablespoons of corn syrup, and that's going to prevent
Hmm.
crystallization when you make it. But it's
Hmm.
not even necessary. So the one we have today doesn't have any stabilizers. All that it has is maple syrup. So yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah.
So now we've done it the way I think it should be served, like the basic way, which is a light spread over toast or in your case, rice cakes. So
Hmm.
would you like to try it out?
I definitely do because it looks fantastic.
It looks really good. So are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, Santé. What do you think? You look happy.
It's really good. Oh boy.
It,
Yes, I am happy. It's really good.
it's really nice. It's creamy. It's really sweet.
Really sweet.
But it's gonna sound weird. I think it's because I put it on this Ace Bakery whole grain bread, which has like full seeds in it. It's somehow not as sweet as I thought it was. But I think if I give this to someone who has never had it before, they will tell me it's the sweetest thing they've ever had. So maybe I won't. I won't keep this
You
on the
know,
record, you know?
I think this is the first time I've had maple butter. I might be lying. I can't remember that well. But
Yeah, I don't think it's
I want to
something
say,
you would have in regular circumstances if, like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not an occasional thing. However, um, since this is my first time trying it, I want to say, yes, it's sweet, but it's not that intense. Like, I've had very sweet spreads before, like, caramel or hazelnut. But this is really, like, it's sweet, yes, but it's kind of, I guess because of the lightness of the texture. I don't know how to explain it. Because, it's not, like, really,
Oh,
really thick. It's
so
pretty,
yeah,
like,
the
the
aeration through the
consistency.
whipping of
Mm-hmm.
the cooled maple syrup would make it lighter in feel. So I understand
Mm-hmm.
what you mean. It's not as heavy as if you were to take the exact same amount of maple syrup, pure, and
Right.
just put it on
Right.
toast.
Right.
So that I agree with. Now, if you were to be a fancy schmancy person with like 5 minutes more to make something, how would you utilize this?
Hmm. That's a good question. I feel like if I were to have this I would really actually have this for breakfast, believe it or not. I would have this regularly on toast. I would probably add a little bit of salt, which sounds really weird, but that's just my take. Like that's my taste. That's my type of taste or my type of foods
That's okay.
is
This is a
sweet and
safe
salty.
space.
Yeah,
It's a safe space
sweet.
here until you like table syrup. That's all.
True. Not anymore. I used to. Not anymore. But I would add a little bit of salt, some pretty thick like sea salt. No, I don't want to say sea salt, just like thick, coarse salt.
Yeah.
I think would be nice. Not too much, just a little bit, just to have a little kick in there. Um, and I would say something crunchy, but I feel like the salt might be crunchy enough, but that might be too salty. So maybe something crunchy. I think I would probably add a few nuts, if anything. It's really good. I would see myself eating this a lot.
So what you described, I have what I made for the episode, and then I have my post prod snack. And what
Hmm.
I did is I used the same type of toast. I basically cut the toast in half, and there's one
Hmm.
half that has vegan butter, then it
Hmm.
has the maple butter. So then you have fat and sweetness.
Hmm.
Then I put tree nuts that I got from Forbes Wild Foods when I visited them. So it's like a
Hmm.
very creamy, crunchy walnut type of nut. And then I put salt on top. So I think you're reading into my brain. The only thing I would do different as well is I would cut through it by adding fruit, but it would be a specific type of fruit. It wouldn't be banana or
Like a
strawberries.
citrusy maybe, like kiwi.
I'm gonna
No, I
say
was
no
just
because
I
my
was just
brain
trying to I
cannot
was just trying to
compute, but
guess.
maybe. I don't know. I'm just like I'm open to it, but also it's not it's more tropical, so you just broke my brain. But I
No,
would
it's because
actually
I was
put
trying to see if I
blueberries.
was if I was there.
It's just
Blueberries,
connected
that's a good idea. Yeah.
because like the blueberries are a little bit sour, but now
Hmm.
my brain is trying to compute the kiwis and it's not computing because I've never had that with it.
I've never had it either. It just kind of came to me. I'm like, you know what, maybe. But blueberry sounds like a great idea.
Well, kiwi is also sour, so I think both would work. But yeah, so blueberry off season, and not to hit on the poor blueberries who didn't ask for this. They're a little bit more sour, so I think they would be perfect in this application. And then you get like a variety of textures, and you could
Hmm.
charge easily $15 a toast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You can.
Just add
That's
enough
a.
ingredients that are inexpensive to charge too much, and people will believe you. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, you just gave me the best idea. Okay, it won't be regular toast. It has to be, those like big Italian. I want to say Italian loaves. Those big
Brioche?
loaves that look like this.
Yeah.
No, it's like imagine the
Oh,
shape,
yes.
right? They're not like long
Sourdough?
ones. They're like kinda.
Yeah.
It's not sourdough. It's just specifically bread that looks
Yeah.
like this.
Oval, yeah.
And like you slice it, right? And then it's like there's the little ones and then there's like the really big ones that are like this.
Uh-huh.
And like you toast them, you put them in a toaster and they're like really crispy and crunchy. That type of I don't know how to explain it. That
So
type of bread with this And
Yeah.
everything else, that's a $15 piece of toast right there.
The category of bread you're talking about is homemade or bakery bread. So it's just professionally
Hmm.
made bread with like a higher quality
Hmm.
flour. But
Hmm.
essentially, yeah, you would just go back to pure ingredients. It would actually be less
Hmm.
expensive for you because you'd probably also be the person making the bread. And then
Right.
I actually think we could get away with 18 if we use salt flakes and we call it fleur de sel. We're just throwing a little French. That is $18 right there. St. Catherine,
1875.
St. Roch, like any neighborhood would pay that much money.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would pay that much money. Let's be honest. It's about the experience. I would do it. I
I
would
would do it because I'm
definitely do it.
financially reckless, but sure, the experience.
Yes, that too. I would do it for both reasons.
Like if they have a matcha latte on the menu, it's over for me. It's over for me.
It's not for both of us.
So
Matcha latte plus one of these $15, $18.75
yeah.
toasts. It's a
And then they
$30
can say
breakfast.
like grade C matcha, and I'll be like, yeah, that's a good grade. I know nothing about matcha. I'll believe them.
Yeah, sure. Great C. Yeah, of course. That makes perfect
Of
sense.
course,
And it
you
would be
know.
served in a little cup like this. Like it would be
Oh,
something
absolutely.
like that. $30 meal. I would do it 100%.
Yeah, see, this is why we don't go out, but exactly. So, how to segue back. The maple butter that we're talking about here, actually, I had another idea. I would put it in crepes as well. I feel like the same
Yes.
ingredients.
Oh my God. Yes. What?
I
Are
got
we?
distracted by how good that idea would be, you know?
I agree. Yeah, that would be really good. That would be fantastic.
So, to me, that's like an iconic ingredient because it takes so little in order to make something so great that is obviously very sweet. But it's
Hmm.
essentially, you know, very reminiscent in the way that it's made by heating it, cooling it, heating it, cooling it. It's the same thing as the temperature management that is used in order to make maple syrup itself. So, in terms of how maple syrup is made, I think it's kind of fascinating. Like, if
Hmm.
we take it back to the very roots.
In the past, during the maple season, the sugar tappers of the Anishinaabeg tribes would hack into a tree until the blade was wet with sap. Pause. Then, they'd clean the gash with a knife and awl before hollowing out an evenly split birch or sumac twig and inserting it into the gash. This would become a channel that would let the sap freely flow into a bucket or mapuk, a basket made from woven strips of birch bark and sealed with pine resin.
Mhm. And from there, the sap would very often be enjoyed as is, or otherwise it would be left to freeze overnight so that the bulk of the water could be removed in the morning to reveal really purified sugar liquid. They could then heat it up into crystallized maple sugar and package it into little cakes or molds for transportation and storage. So that collection method is actually very, very close to how it's done today. Theoretically, we may have replaced birch with plastic and added a couple filtering systems along the way, but indigenous communities had really come up with the best system out there. Nowadays, it's a four-step process. Now, we're going to very briefly cover it, but the best explanation that I've seen so far and the most extensive one is in the Crown Maple Guide to Maple Syrup. If you like science and you like sugar, I highly recommend this book. So, the first step out of four would be to drill a hole about 1.5 to 2.5 inches deep and use a hammer to push in a spile. Now, spile is a very specific term. It's kind of a hybrid between a spout on one end and a hollowed out nail in the other. So, what you would do is you would tap in on the end that is the spout to push it into the tree. Then you would hook up a bucket right under the spile, or if the production size is much bigger, you would hook in a sapline system, which would go through the entire forest of sugar bush. This is especially useful because a lot of the terrain where the big sugar maple farms, I guess, are set is really difficult to access. And if you're using a
Hmm.
bucket, you kind of have to empty it twice a day, like one to two times a day. And to go through the
Hmm.
whole forest is a big hassle. So it's better to have a little hookup.
Hmm.
Now, once the bucket is full, as I said, or if you've gathered the quantity you want through a sapline system, you would put the maple sap through a reverse osmosis filtration system, which would take out up to 90% of the water. Now, reverse osmosis is something I like to say, and that I struggle a bit to understand. Essentially, they're using an insane amount of pressure to push the sap through a filtration system, and then only the sap will remain and the water will be completely taken out. The water that remains is really pure. It has absolutely no minerals in it. So they're then going to use it to clean the equipment at the end of the day. Now, that's just to take out some of the water, and this really helps save on electricity and keep, for example, from overheating the maple syrup and getting it burnt, which is something that can absolutely happen when you try to take out all the water. So the sap will then be taken through a very complex system of evaporators, and it's going to be heated up until it reaches a very specific density and a very specific sugar concentration. It's evaluated at about 66 to 68 bricks. Now, bricks is a unit system that is used when you make alcohol to see the amount of liquid to the amount of sugar solids. So it's been transferred to a system of maple syrup production, and roughly 66 to 68 bricks would be about 66 to 68% of sugar. So that's a concentration level. And in Canada, we have very strict guidelines about this. So for example, all the products we're trying out today should be within that range and usually will be at 66. So yeah. Now,
good to know.
Yeah, it's really cool. I was reading about this and I was like, this is much smarter than I am. And I had to watch a video by a man named George. And he was like, this is how a hydrometer works. Let's have a look. And I realized I had gone in too deep. So, but it's a
Yeah, when
really
you sent me
cool
that one
process.
video, I was literally so mesmerized by it. I was like, this is crazy, but I do not understand a single thing
It's
that
an
I'm watching.
insane process. So this is one of the sources I use for today's, um, podcast. I'm gonna link it up at the bottom because it's super interesting. And I would just like to say, the son of the owner in the video looks like a member of Nickelback. And
Oh
it's
my
very
God.
hard to watch the video once you realize that. But they're so knowledgeable and they teach you so much in such a short amount of time. So they showed me the whole process top to bottom and really helped complete the information. And they even showed the last step, which if you're able to click on that video and actually get to the part like of the fourth step is insane. Essentially, once the desired density slash sugar concentration level is achieved, the maple syrup will be filtered one last time to take out all the sand that escaped the previous filtration systems, and then it's all going to be cooled, graded, and bottled. But I will just say, those filters, once they were done, looked wild. It looked
That
like,
was my favorite part.
yeah, it looked really satisfying. There was something about it was kind of like when you put on smoky eyeshadow and then you wipe it. That
Can't
first
relate.
wipe looks nuts. To me,
Oh my
that's what it
God.
looks like.
I can't relate, but I just thought it was great. It looked to me like, whenever you make coffee and like
Oh yeah,
you
that.
use a coffee
Yeah,
filter, it to me it looked like that, like the leftover, you know,
grains. That's
coffee
true.
grains. There you go. Yeah, perfect.
That's
It
actually
looked to
true.
me like that. And but that was my favorite part.
It was so
100%.
cool. Now, we did talk about this today, like after you saw the video and everything, but at what step of the process would you, halt production in order to just take a chug?
So I do have two. And I feel like I always have two. I swear to God,
Uh-huh.
every time you bring this up, I always have two. One, I actually want to try it directly from the tree.
Hmm.
I'm almost positive I've seen a cartoon before when I was younger where somebody tried a tree sap and it tasted disgusting. But I'm curious. I'm so curious about because it's a sugar maple, so I'm curious about that
Hmm.
flavor. But two, actually, I might have a third one. I might have to rewatch the video again. But two, at the top of my head, it's definitely right after the filtration system.
Okay.
That maple is like that syrup is still hot, right? When it goes through the filtration system. Or is it like
So
room
okay,
temperature kind of?
so are you talking about the reverse osmosis or um after it's
The
fully
final step
the final
when it's
step?
going
Okay,
through the yes.
so yes, it's still gonna be hot when it goes through the filtration system, and they actually make sure to move the barrels to a cooler part of the storage unit so you can
Hmm.
immediately cool down and stop the cooking. But yes, when it goes through the filtration system, technically you would be drinking lava. Yeah.
Well, if I could somehow cool that lava just a little bit and have hot maple syrup without it being packaged in a plastic bottle, 100%. I would try that. I want to just open the tap and just instantly. That
Yeah.
that would be a dream come true.
I will say so in that video, I swear it's like 10 minutes and it's the most valuable 10 minutes of your day. There is a moment where like it's just a shot that they use as a transition where you see the maple syrup, the golden syrup flowing through the tube into another machine. Right there and then, I wanted to take a snip and chug it. But I actually know that if I chug maple syrup, I won't like it. However, I've had sap water before, so
Hmm.
sugar maple water. And I think I had it, they were tapping a tree at my school when I was like in kindergarten. I think my school was way too bougie. And they gave me a sip and they were like, they were really too bougie considering how young I was. They're like, there's notes of oak, hickory, a little bit of sweetness. And I was like, where? This is nothing. This is thick water. I do not understand why I'm here. And I remember being so frustrated. But now, as an adult who is now pretending to enjoy beverages and give them qualities I don't understand, I would sign up so fast for SAP, like so fast.
I
So
would too.
I think we need to find a sugar shack in Quebec and just go and be like, hey, there's no visits or today or anything, but like we'll give you $5 for just like a bucket.
Just let us drink the water, please.
And they're gonna be like, it's not filtered. And we're like, oh, we know.
That's okay. Just take the $5. Just let us drink the damn water.
Yeah, we're
We
just
brought our own
saving you some.
straws.
They're reusable, we thought of everything. So,
But you
you
guys will
know,
contaminate the water. We're giving you
okay,
$5, man.
listen.
Come on, take it or
Will we
leave it.
contaminate the water or will the water contaminate us?
Facts. Oh my god.
Like, hello?
Yeah, maybe I'll
So,
get a stomach virus right after.
I mean, that's the price for a good time, you
It's
know?
worth it for $5. It's worth
For the experience, excuse me, I want my sap water virus for $5 and my matcha latte for 10. Please and thank you.
it. Yes, and the maple butter toast for 18.75.
Oh, it's gone up. Oh, inflation. I get it.
Yeah.
Now, Canada has earned the reputation of being a country of maple chuggers. That's like one of the biggest jokes I've seen in any movie ever. And I do think that's rooted in misconceptions.